In February 1989, just weeks before her death, Lucille Ball sat down for what would be her last television interview. She was 77 years old, frail and visibly tired. But when the cameras rolled, something remarkable happened. For the first time in decades, the woman who'd spent her entire life making America laugh let the mask slip. She talked about loneliness, about regret, about watching herself on television late at night because she couldn't sleep. The interviewer, clearly uncomfortable, tried to steer toward happier memories. Lucy wouldn't let her. "I'm alone now," she said matter-of-factly. "That's just how it is." The interview aired once and was quietly shelved. Most people never saw it, but those who did say it was one of the most heartbreaking things they'd ever witnessed. The queen of comedy, stripped of pretense, finally telling the truth. The mansion in Beverly Hills felt cavernous. Lucille Ball lived there by herself, rattling around in rooms that once hosted Hollywood's biggest parties. Her second husband, Gary Morton, had moved into a separate wing years earlier. They were still married, technically, but he had his life and she had hers. Friends who visited during those final months paint a grim picture. The house was cold, literally and figuratively. Lucy spent most of her time in one room, watching old episodes of I Love Lucy on a small television set. She'd sit there for hours, one friend told a biographer, just watching herself from 40 years ago, when everything was different. Her health had been declining since 1988. The cancellation of Life with Lucy 2 years earlier had devastated her more than anyone realized at the time. The sitcom, her attempt at a comeback at age 75, lasted just 8 episodes before ABC pulled the plug. Critics were brutal. One review called it painful to watch. Another suggested Lucy should retire gracefully. She read every single review. She kept them in a folder in her bedroom. When the show was canceled, something inside her seemed to break. She stopped going out. She stopped returning calls from old friends. She just sat in that cold house, alone with her memories. The show that made her famous had become her only real companion. Night after night, she'd watch those old episodes from the 1950s. There she was, young and vibrant, with Desi by her side. There she was, making millions of people laugh. But the woman on the screen and the woman watching it were separated by nearly 40 years of pain, divorce, loss, and loneliness. According to her housekeeper, Lucy would sometimes talk back to the television. "Look at us," she'd say. "We had no idea what was coming." The loneliness wasn't new. Lucy had been running from it her entire life. It started when she was 3 years old, in Jamestown, New York. Her father, Henry Ball, died suddenly of typhoid fever in February 1915. One day he was there, the next he was gone. Lucy was too young to fully understand death, but she understood absence. Years later, she told an interviewer about a memory from around that time, watching a bird trapped under a basket in the yard. It kept throwing itself against the wicker, desperate to escape. She wanted to help it, but her mother told her no. The bird had to stay trapped. Lucy never forgot that image. She said it was how she felt for most of her childhood. After her father died, Lucy's mother, Desi, struggled to support 2 children alone. She eventually remarried a man named Ed Peterson, and the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Ed was strict, humorless, and had little patience for Lucy's theatrical tendencies. Desi, trying to hold the family together, often sent Lucy away to live with relatives. For months at a time, Lucy would stay with Ed's parents in a small, cold house where laughter was discouraged and children were expected to be seen but not heard. She felt unwanted. She felt like a burden. Then came the incident that would haunt the family for years. In 1927, when Lucy was 15, her younger brother Fred was playing with a rifle in the backyard. The gun went off accidentally, struck a neighbor, who was paralyzed. The family was sued for everything they had. They lost their house. They lost their savings. The community turned on them. Ed Peterson left the family shortly after. Lucy later said that those years taught her that happiness could be ripped away at any moment, that security was an illusion. She learned to perform, to make people laugh, because laughter was armor. If people were laughing, they couldn't hurt you. Lucy's road to stardom was anything but smooth. At 17, she moved to New York City to attend drama school at the John Murray Anderson School for the Dramatic Arts. She lasted 6 weeks before the school sent a letter to her mother suggesting Lucy try another profession. The rejection stung, but she stayed in New York, working as a model and taking whatever small theatrical roles she could find. By the late 1930s, she'd made her way to Hollywood, where she became what the industry called Queen of the B-movies, reliable, hard-working, but never quite the leading lady. Everything changed in 1940 when she met Desi on the set of Too Many Girls. He was a Cuban bandleader, 6 years younger than Lucy, with charm that could light up a room. They married after just 6 months. The relationship was passionate, tempestuous, and complicated from the start. Desi drank heavily, he was unfaithful, they fought constantly, but they also had something electric between them, something that would eventually translate into television gold. In 1950, CBS wanted Lucy for a sitcom, but the network executives balked at casting Desi as her husband, a Cuban bandleader married to a red-headed American housewife. Audiences would never believe it, they said. Lucy fought them hard. She and Desi created a vaudeville act and took it on the road to prove that audiences loved them together. CBS finally relented. I Love Lucy premiered on October 15, 1951, and became an instant phenomenon. By 1952, more than 10 million households were tuning in every Monday night. The episode where Lucy gave birth to little Ricky in January 1953 drew 44 million viewers, more people than watched President Eisenhower's inauguration the next day. But behind the scenes, the marriage was crumbling. Desi's drinking got worse. The rumors about other women were constant. Lucy threw herself into work, perfecting every pratfall, every facial expression, every comedic moment. On camera, they looked like the perfect couple. Off camera, they could barely stand to be in the same room. The show that made them America's sweethearts was slowly destroying them both. In September 1953, just as I Love Lucy was at the height of its popularity, a scandal nearly destroyed everything. A newspaper columnist discovered that Lucy had registered as a communist in 1936, 17 years earlier, when she was a 25-year-old actress trying to please her socialist grandfather. The story broke on a Friday. By Monday, the House Un-American Activities Committee wanted to question her. The timing couldn't have been worse. This was the McCarthy era. When communist accusations ended careers overnight, Lucy was terrified. The show's sponsors threatened to pull their support. CBS executives held emergency meetings about whether to cancel the series. Desi, for all his faults, stepped up in a way he rarely did. He appeared before the press and defended his wife publicly. "The only thing red about Lucy is her hair," he said, "and even that's not legitimate." The line got laughs, which helped diffuse some of the tension. Lucy testified before Hawk in Los Angeles. She explained about her grandfather, about being young and naive, about never attending a single Communist Party meeting. The committee seemed satisfied. J. Edgar Hoover himself issued a statement clearing her of any subversive activities. But the damage was done. Lucy was humiliated. For weeks she couldn't leave the house without reporters shouting questions. The woman who made her living making people laugh had become the subject of national suspicion and scorn. The incident changed her. Friends say she became more guarded, less trusting. She'd always been a perfectionist, but after the Red Scare, she became obsessive about controlling her image. Every script, every interview, every public appearance had to be carefully managed. She could never let her guard down again. The cost of fame, she was learning, was constant vigilance. By 1960, the marriage to Desi was beyond repair. They divorced in May of that year, ending one of Hollywood's most famous partnerships. Lucy bought out Desi's share of Desilu Productions and became the first woman to run a major Hollywood studio. On paper, it looked like a triumph. In reality, she was exhausted, heartbroken, and raising 2 children largely on her own. Daughter Lucy was 9, son Desi Jr. was 7. Both would struggle for years with the weight of having Lucille Ball as a mother. She married Gary Morton in 1961, less than a year after the divorce. Morton was a comedian, dependable and steady, everything Desi wasn't. But friends say Lucy never loved Gary the way she loved Desi. He was safe, he was there, that was enough. Meanwhile, her children were acting out. Desi Jr. became a teen idol in the late 1960s with the band Dino, Desi and Billy, but his personal life was chaotic. At 17, he got his girlfriend pregnant. She was 34 at the time, and the scandal made tabloid headlines for months. Lucy had her own struggles with her mother's impossibly high standards. Lucy was demanding, critical, and rarely satisfied. Both children would later talk in interviews about growing up in their mother's shadow, about never quite measuring up. She'd learned from her own childhood that love was conditional, that it could be withdrawn at any moment. She passed that lesson on without meaning to. In August 1988, Lucy's closest friend and I Love Lucy co-star Vivian Vance died of cancer. Lucy was devastated. She and Vivian had been through everything together, the glory years of the show, the divorces, the comebacks. Vivian's death left Lucy feeling even more isolated. The people who really knew her, who remembered what it was like in the beginning, were disappearing one by one. She was 77 years old, and most days she felt every year of it. In November 1986, Lucy got a phone call from California. Desi was dying. Lung cancer, the doctors said. He had weeks, maybe days. Lucy dropped everything and went to see him. It was the first time they'd been alone together in years. According to people close to both of them, they talked for hours. They talked about the early days, about the show, about where it all went wrong. Desi told her he never stopped loving her. Lucy cried. When she left that day, she knew she'd never see him again. Desi Arnaz died on December 20, 1986. He was 69 years old. A few weeks later, in December 1986, Lucy was honored at the Kennedy Center. She wore a dark gown and sat in the presidential box next to Ronald and Nancy Reagan. When it came time to pay tribute to her, someone read a letter Desi had written before he died. In it, he talked about their love, their partnership, and the magic they'd created together. "We had something nobody else has ever had," he wrote. Lucy sat very still, tears streaming down her face. The cameras caught it all, a rare moment when she couldn't hide behind the comedy. The final interview came in February 1989. A local television station wanted to do a retrospective on her career. Lucy agreed, though friends say she was reluctant. She looked frail on camera. Her voice was softer than usual. The interviewer asked about the good times, about I Love Lucy, about the laughs, about her place in television history. Lucy answered politely, but there was a sadness in her eyes that was impossible to miss. Then, without prompting, she started talking about being alone, about watching old episodes late at night, about missing Desi, missing Vivian, missing the way things used to be. "I'm alone now," she said. "That's just how it is." The interviewer seemed uncomfortable, but Lucy kept going. She talked about regrets, about things she wished she'd done differently. She talked about her children, about hoping they understood how much she loved them, even if she didn't always show it the right way. It was raw and unscripted, nothing like the polished Lucille Ball the public knew. The interview was difficult to watch. Here was America's most beloved comedienne, stripped of all pretense, admitting that her life hadn't turned out the way she'd hoped. Less than 2 months later, on April 26, 1989, Lucille Ball died of a ruptured aorta. She was 77 years old. She'd been working until the end, planning new projects, refusing to fully retire. Her funeral was private, attended by family and close friends. The public memorial drew thousands. After Lucy's death, colleagues and friends spoke carefully about her final years. Bob Hope said she was the greatest female star in the history of television, but privately told friends she'd seemed lost the last time he saw her. Carol Burnett, who'd looked up to Lucy her entire career, said the final interview was almost too honest, too revealing. Industry insiders who knew her well weren't surprised by her loneliness. Lucy spent her whole life performing, one longtime friend told a reporter. When the cameras turned off, she didn't know who she was supposed to be. Those who watched that final interview say Lucy seemed unburdened by it, like she'd finally said things she'd been holding in for decades. There was no regret in her voice when she talked about being alone, just acceptance. In one of her last recorded statements, she said, "I made people laugh. That was my job, and I did it well. Maybe that's enough." But people who knew her best say there was more she wanted to say about the cost of fame, about the loneliness of being an icon, about what it really meant to be Lucille Ball. Some stories, it seems, she took with her. What do you think haunted Lucy most in those final years? The loss of Desi, the distance from her children, or something else entirely? If you enjoyed this look at one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, consider subscribing for more stories about the golden age of entertainment. The legends we grew up watching had complicated, often heartbreaking lives behind the laughter.